Discussion this afternoon is on transition to ISO 9001-2015. And whoop, suddenly the wheel is spinning. So like Norval mentioned, we have until September 2018 to transition to ISO 9001-2015. Now, actually, the timeline is a little bit tighter because you typically have to demonstrate a minimum of 3 months of implementation of the new standard. So it really ends up being about a year away, which if somebody is just starting, that's a bit of a challenge. The changes are fairly significant from a structural perspective. It's probably, in my mind, equivalent to the change from ISO 9000, the ISO 9000 series in 1994 to ISO 9001-2000. So if you remember that, and a lot of people said it was literally just an exercise in renumbering, but you know, as we all know now, I think, or at least those that are associated with ISO 9001 based or quality management systems, there were quite a few significant things introduced. In 2015 is somewhat similar because although it is a very significant structural change, there's a lot of conceptual things in there that encourage an organization to really think about where they are. A lot of people want to salvage what they already have as a basic strategy. And I say salvage, the new standard actually does not require us to have a quality manual. The 2008 actually did require a quality manual, but they used the term in 2015 documented information. And technically, a lot of people have decided, well, if we don't need a quality manual, let's drop that. However, the salvage strategy is pretty much one, in my mind, of taking what you have and making sure you've got things covered or what you need to develop. So getting organized on this is what I consider to be a major task. I found that the use of the correlation matrix can be a major help. So the objective for today's discussion is to share experience in the use of the correlation matrix as a tool in a way that provides direct examples and methods from work I did for Hi-Tec Systems so that others might benefit from that experience. And please, bring up questions or discussions at any time and share your experience also. I hope there are a number of folks out there that are involved in organizations that have a quality management system based on ISO 9001. And if you have something to add into this, it's going to be fairly brief, but it's going to be basically on the experience I had, or the experience you might have with the correlation matrix. Its formal title is ISO TC 176, which stands for the Technical Committee 176, SC2 N1293. It is free, it's downloadable, and it is in Word and Excel. And I have the website information there. It provides a map in both directions. Now, I found it easier to use in Word than Excel. I had sort of hoped that if it was in Excel, you could simply do a little bit of plug and copy and paste, and then do a sort and all that type of stuff. It doesn't quite work that way. So I'm not quite sure that the Excel is of a major value. But this is an example of 2015 to ISO 9001-2008. And this is essentially the primary tool I use. You can see, that I would recommend using. You can see that it has the clause, and then in 2015, and then the relevant clauses in 2008. So it's fairly easy to take a look at these things. And although it's in a significantly different structure, you can find what available information you already have about what you're doing. So here it is in the reverse. I personally think that this might be more valuable as sort of like a quick audit that you didn't miss something. But what I tended to find the easiest way to do was to go with the 2015 to 2008, do the research on the quality manual, and do literally a cut and paste to put it into the format for this and determine if further work needed to be done. So now, I would take the referenced item in 2008 and find it in the quality manual, copying it to the new section, and compare to 2015 for revisions needed. Now, I didn't have a split screen to do this, but I've seen people use split screens, and it would probably make it a little bit more effective or efficient. But what I plan to do is show 3 examples using the material, and the examples basically come from the Hi-Tec Systems Quality Manual, which is ISO 9001-2008 based, of course. So now the first one that I'm going to choose is understanding the organization and its context. You can look up the actual requirements in 2015. What I chose to do here was to just give a brief thumbnail view of what the requirement is. I didn't want to violate any copyright rules, that type of stuff. But it requires you to determine external and internal issues relevant to the strategic purpose and direction affecting the organization's ability to achieve intended results and review information about them. So it has this different view of things, and it really starts out at a fairly strategic level. You are required to understand, what is your strategic purpose and direction in order to satisfy this. The referenced sections from ISO 9001-2008 are the Quality Management System Clause and Management Review. And at least in the example that I'm going to use, and we'll see a little bit about Hi-Tec, but it turned out in this organization that the Management Review became one of the primary tools in order to review information and performance. And it probably elevated the management review process to a much higher level than it had been before. So what I found in the Hi-Tec Quality Manual was that a lot of it actually did directly address this, but it was really scattered and required further development. So it wasn't clearly stated in the precision that the 2015 actually asked for. So here's the result of reviewing and updating their quality manual and creating a section called Context of the Organization and Understanding the Organization and its Context. So Hi-Tec is actually primarily a government contractor. They deal quite a bit with the FAA, and they have, I think it's probably about 22 contracts. They're a small business. Some contracts actually provide one individual for work with a federal agency. So that what the statement here is about that external and internal issues are potential risks and opportunities that can affect the ability to achieve the intended results of the QMS. So it's pretty much a matter of going through what external issues are there. And my recommendation is you don't want to get so detailed on this that you end up digging holes. But external issues, we've listed them there. And I think that one of the interesting ones there is changing technology in primary areas of support service, because a lot of their work is actually the development of things. When you go through an airport and get tested on the checking to see if you're carrying anything that you shouldn't be, that's actually something that Hi-Tec has provided considerable support on, and development and testing of that type of system. Now, internal issues, again, listed 4, and it was key personnel changes, growing skills and capability in an organization to meet anticipated needs. And a lot of what they are doing is, when they are a successful bidder on a contractor, they need to go out and find qualified individuals to work on that contract. So both the personnel changes and growing skills and capabilities. And I said, also success in continual improvements. Oftentimes when you get a contract, it says one thing, and then you actually need to deliver quite a few other things, or some things that are a little bit different. So the monitoring review of information will be done in management review, and there's the reference to an actual procedure that required quite a bit of rebuild in order to cover this and other things. And I'm not going to go into all the details of their QMS, but quite a bit of the work that is going on in that management review. So, any questions on this particular item? It feels to some degree like it's just a rewording of what has been there, but it represents a fair amount of effort to consolidate information and make it relatively direct. So any questions or comments?
Don, excuse me just a moment. This is Norval. Just wanted to remind everybody that everybody's on mute except for Don and myself. If you do have a question for Don, please use the chat box. I did send a note a few minutes ago about that. If you do have a question for him, we will pause here for a moment and let you type it in.
I guess the other thing would be if anybody else has experience in, transition, at this point. Okay, well, I'm going to move on.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to move on. Okay, one of the big things that has drawn a lot of attention in the 2015 standard is that there's a section on action on assessing and taking actions to address risk and opportunity. And as a matter of fact, this basically booted out a specific requirement on preventive action, although it's represented as one of the references in here where it is an action to address risks and opportunities. And anybody who's done failure mode and effect analysis or any of that type of thing, probably realizes that at the heart of that is identifying what type of risks and opportunities exist, especially due to variation. So it references the quality management system planning and preventive action. Now, we had quite a bit that was documented already, but it really needed reorganization, okay? So in order to meet this. So here, and it is somewhat extensive, okay? But I think it's fairly straightforward personally, but the overall aim in the Hi-Tec organization of risk and opportunity management is to ensure that organizational resources and capabilities are employed in an efficient and effective manner to take advantage of opportunities and mitigate risk. So top management, this is sort of like some of the boilerplate that comes along with it, but they implement, or they bring in the risk-based thinking by providing sufficient resources, assigning responsibilities, reviewing information, and addressing risk and opportunities that have been identified, so that a specific number of things happen. Okay. Now, one of the things is that this standard sort of continues to build and interweave. So where the external issues that were identified in the previous section and assessment of needs and expectations of interested parties, which we didn't talk about, but the term interested parties is now within the standard. Used to be stakeholders, but interested parties is actually a bit more expansive in my mind. But it almost takes you to the point of taking those two things and putting them down as a matrix. So it's part of the day-to-day operation and as part of the management review. So they will be implementing the actions into the QMS process and evaluating the effectiveness, especially within the management review. Now, what's behind this at a slightly more detailed level, okay, beyond the management review, is that each contract has a program manager. And what they do with each contract is independently identify what risks and opportunities exist within that contract itself. So there's a bit more detail both within the manual, and this is more or less the generic statement around it. So it's, and if you think about it a bit, I mean, any organization that has been effective either with a QMS or without a QMS, this is an inherent thing that they're doing. They're trying to continually evaluate and eliminate risk, and risk is identified as the result of variation that could prevent you from achieving the intended results. Okay, so once again, I'm going to pause, and this is an example of organization. Oh, I didn't mean to do that.
Okay, Don, I don't know if you can see the chat box, but you do have a question from Henderson Thomas.
Okay, somehow I got myself on here. Whoop. Okay, I always find the wording of ensure resources are employed in an efficient and effective manner too broad for enforcement. I'm going to see how I can get rid of this. Let me see, what have I got here? Because everybody's looking at me and they see I'm in my Virginia Tech t-shirt. I guess I wouldn't disagree with you. I think that the details here, to back it up, would be where you would tend to look. And like I was saying, that within the Hi-Tec system, each contract has a program manager. There's monitoring and measuring of the use of resources. So, I mean, I'm not quite sure how to go into that. Do you want to expand?
Henderson, if you'd like to unmute yourself, please do. It might help things move along a little quicker.
Yeah, I guess I was getting to the point, if you're looking at that and then a company comes back and say, well, I believe that we're employing this in an efficient and effective manner, where do you go from that point if the organization themselves just make the straight statement? Can you hear me?
Well, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to know if you heard me.
I didn't catch that last part.
Oh, I said, if you're looking at comparing whether or not your organization is fulfilling this item of planning, and they come back and say, well, we believe or we feel as an organization that we're employing our resources in an efficient and effective manner. As me looking at it, auditing, how do I, even if I don't believe that is true, but how do you combat it? Them stating just that they believe they are.
Okay. Well, again, a lot of this actually would be at the detail level in contracts where the manpower requirement and the tasks are actually described, and that's essentially how a bid is generated on a contract, and it becomes the measure in other systems that Hi-Tec has to demonstrate that we are delivering what was requested with the manpower and how it's being used. And I would relate that to, I would bring that question on, well, can you demonstrate that you are you are employing resources in an effective and efficient manner at the contract level? And that's represented in slightly further detail in other portions, the other portions of the quality manual. So, yeah, I mean, I think what you're pointing out is that essentially quite a few of these things could be improved by referencing within the manual, you know, where you would look at that. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate the observation. You know, I mean, that's these types of things, when you go through them the first time, you're hoping that you put enough down that people can use it effectively to say, well, how do I do that? And that's a very, very rigorous test. You know, so thank you. Okay, it looks like that's the only one.
If anybody else has a question for Don, please unmute yourself just like Henderson did. I think it might go a little quicker.
Okay, I'm going to move on.
Okay.
We might be done very quickly because this is the last example. Okay, organizational knowledge. So it's not a very big piece, and it's at a slightly lower level of detail, but it requires us to determine what the organizational knowledge needed to achieve conformity of products and services and maintain it. So, and in the notes, it is characterized as generally being based on experience and brings to mind the issues of depending on individual experience. This happens to be the only one in the matrix that states no equivalent cause when you look at the correlation matrix. I think that there's actually quite a bit in here. If any of you have been in an organization where you're literally dependent on an individual, and that that person either mentors others or does the work directly, and then they've left. Actually, IT organizations experience this, on a not on a routine basis, but so it leads you to the idea of documenting and preserving knowledge, which is actually organizationally specific. So this required a little bit more thinking about how do we fill this, and what we came up, and again, is focusing on what is already done. Personally, I actually paused and considered if the real intent of this portion is to bring in the thinking on what often in an organization is called tribal knowledge. I don't know if any of you remember, but in the body of knowledge quality process in December 2011, there was a rather interesting article about tribal quest, which went into organizational behavior around knowledge. And I think at the time, it created quite a bit of energy around thinking about this. So it may have some relationship to there. But what we identified was two categories of organizational knowledge needed for the operation of the high-tech processes and to achieve conformity to deliverables. And the first broad category was contract-specific knowledge. So this actually gets back a little bit to that previous question. But they have what is referred to as the program management folders and the business development portal, which we provide links there. And they are essentially databases that include contract statements of work, internal communications, reports, and evaluations. So this makes accessible the contract-specific information about what was done, how it was done, what the results were, even down to the point of progress made on specific tasks, because you have communications, reports, and evaluations in there. So it's a fairly extensive database, but it can give you access to individual contracts. So this is also used rather effectively in developing bids on new contracts of a similar nature. So you don't want to go into a contract bid and say you will do something that you actually haven't done before or know that you have the capability. The other one is the QMS process knowledge, and basically that's available to all employees through an online service, and it has all of the information as far as the QMS, the quality manual. There are, I believe, 7 procedures, quite a few forms, and all of that. And additionally, there is improvement information available in the quality improvement report database, and the drive is listed there, and that is also included in management review data. So in the early stages here of development, I think that we continue to identify quality improvement. We had corrective actions, preventive actions, opportunities for improvement, and worked through that process using essentially one system, but by having that in a database, again, it makes it available, and what is found in one contract may be usable in other contracts, and the solution of a problem at one point in time, you may need to come back to that and find out, well, either what did we do right there, or what did we not do right. So organizational knowledge. I see. Let me see. I see we've got a chat. Would it be wise, if possible, to maintain records as the thought going into why things were done? Just being open. Do you want to come off mute?
I'm off.
So, could it be open to future lawsuits is an interesting question. As to why things were done. Could you give me a little bit more behind what you're asking there?
Well, basically what I'm asking is, we have this tribal knowledge. Sometimes it's not always, this knowledge is used to determination of an action. And usually there's reasoning behind it that often in the companies I've worked for that aren't captured. We may capture the fact that we're doing this, but we don't actually capture the thoughts that went behind it, the choices that we've had, and why we decided to go this route. That information has never been captured. And I was wondering if we did capture that information, can it come back and backfire against the organization in a future date?
Well, that's a consideration. I think in my experience that when you go back, especially as this is referring to the improvement information in the quality improvement report that this organization has, a lot of the rationale behind why was something selected is represented in there, primarily in their problem solving. Throughout the standard, you're asked to document your reasoning behind things. Like, why is this a risk? What is it you may do? I would say that the contract-specific knowledge or information is predominantly action-oriented. It's not so much, well, why did we choose to do this? That's not characteristic of that type of system thinking, of that type of system. But the why behind things is probably a little bit more in that improvement information that you can go back to. Now, could it be open to future lawsuits? Again, it's a fairly interesting question. Back when I was working at DuPont, they had a major lawsuit in the agricultural business with a chemical benylate. And I think, virtually everything that related to benylate was, what do they, the organization, the federal government subpoenaed everything, and I think in a case like that, you're going to be overwhelmed. Clearly, the idea of future lawsuit would be that the organization has actually gotten themselves in trouble pretty seriously. So I don't know that having documented your logic would put you at further risk than the actual action itself. In my mind, the main emphasis here is on making sure that if the organization has experience, that doesn't go out the door. If an individual or what they sometimes refer to as a single point failure occurs, because any of us could be leaving at any moment. But how do you pick up the pieces? Did I give too much of an answer or an inadequate answer there?
No, it was adequate, but I was thinking, especially when you're looking at contracts, because one person may be more influential than others in determining the award of contracts, and what if that person just may have happened to be a little biased, and all of that is kind of somehow not noted as they were biased, because that would be a note, but showing that only this one person really led the pathway for the award of this contract. And later on, it came back that your cousin worked for them and your cousin got fired or something. And so he excluded this other company.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking of how do you make sure, because it's asking for documentation of stuff and making sure that, I guess the organization isn't hanging out there.
Yeah. Well, I tend to think that, you're better off in having the information when people disappear than not having it. It probably comes back to maybe simple examples of, and this is one from Hi-Tec, where they actually had an individual who did recruiting. And he was pretty good at it. He used a lot of the automated systems out there. And, if they asked him to find somebody who was an aviation engineer specializing in fuels, he was pretty much able to find somebody. Now, sometimes that meant somebody who was on another contract, and he would take them away from their operation. But this guy actually never really documented how he did what he did. And the person who came in and replaced him several months later, really struggled with what the heck do you do here? And they ended up basically rescoping the task. And I think to some degree being less effective. So the organization suffered as a result of that in its capability to provide people, which was basically its primary, product, qualified people for contracts. And had he sat down and actually done some documentation, even if it was just to pick things up, but that didn't happen. So in that case, now I'm not talking about a situation where there's is any example of, future lawsuits, that type of stuff. But I think the overall intent here is to make sure that if somebody walks out the door or just doesn't come in again, that you have the wherewithal to pick up the pieces and continue necessary work. Okay. Are there any others out there?
Yeah, we've got about 10 or 15 minutes, so if anybody does have a question for Don or would like to share an experience they've had with transitioning to ISO 9001-2015, by all means, please share.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because that was the 3 examples.
Okay, Don, it doesn't look like we're going to get any more questions.
Okay, well, I hope that that fit the bill, Norval.
I believe it did. I'd like to take a quick moment here to remind everybody that we will be doing an electronic feedback survey for this event today. We'll be sending a link to that, as well as a link to the YouTube recording. So if there was something that you may have missed that was earlier in the talk that you want to go back and review on your own convenience, you can certainly do that. And we also have a copy of Don's slides that we can share as well as a PDF. So
I did modify it for this one, so I'll send you a copy of the new one.
Okay, that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll try to get all the information sent out to everybody here this afternoon, so that way they have it. But anyway, it looks like there's no further questions. Another reminder that our next webinar for June will be on Monday, June 19th, which is 2 weeks from today. A number of people have registered for it, but there are still a lot of spaces open. So if you want to take a look at it and perhaps register for it, you're certainly welcome to do so. I don't have any other information to pass along. Don, did you have anything else?
No, I wish I'd put another 10, 15 minutes in this.
No, that's quite okay. We're good here. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for today's webinar, and also thank you, Don, for presenting. And we'd like to hope everybody has a good rest of the day. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye now.